Welcome everyone to this conference honoring the work of the fellows at Salem State University's Center for Childhood and Youth Studies. We are delighted to have you join us today, where we will be discussing how young people are changing the world for the better. The Center for Childhood and Youth Studies at Salem State University in Massachusetts is one of the earliest and oldest centers at the university, and we specialize in doing research, education, consultations all around the area of issues that pertain to children and young people. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Convention on the Rights of the Child define a child as anyone under 18. So we're focusing on that, but also about people who are a stretch older than that. Today, we will be looking at the work of a half dozen fellows with us, and they're going to highlight their work. We will introduce them, they will give their presentation, then there will be time for question and answers. Okay. It is important to realize that we try to support work in every way. We are partners with Human Rights Educators USA, and HREUSA.org has a competition every year for graduate students who would like to become fellows or interns at HREUSA, and it pays $1,500 for a summer stipend. So we're accepting applications for that. Also, there is a summer Youth Rights Hero Award that Eric Knudsen will be talking about later today in our conference. And they honor young people who are doing work to honor children's human rights, both as individuals and as groups. Okay. As another point of interest, we will be accepting applications for fellows for the upcoming academic year. We hope that our fellows that you hear today will continue to join us, but we will make room for new people who would like to come as well. So right now we're going to have a couple of short videos. So I'm going to share my screen, and we will be hearing first from David Hogg, who does run March for Our Lives. And he cannot be with us physically today, but he has given us his video. So let us hear first from David.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be speaking to you virtually today and telling you a little bit about my story and the important moment that we're in as a country. My story starts out on February 14th of 2018. That day, 17 of my classmates and teachers were murdered. My 14-year-old sister, Lauren, was at school that day as well, as was I. And at the time of the shooting happening, we thought it was a drill. We evacuated normally and went to our, our fire evacuation zone. And as I was walking towards our fire evacuation zone, a flood of students starts running in the opposite direction of where I was going, saying, "Don't come this way, he's coming this way." And naturally, I started running along with them. And as I was doing that, there was a janitor that stopped me and about 30 other students or so and said, "Don't come this way, he's over here." And as he said that, the door to the classroom right next to us opened up, and the teacher got about all 30 of us students in there at the same time. When I got in there, students were panicking, throwing up, having panic attacks, calling their loved ones, not knowing what was happening, not knowing if it was a drill, not knowing what was going on. And in that moment, the only thing that I could think to do with myself was to be a journalist. I was a student journalist at the time. So I interviewed my classmates. And before the shooting, I learned about the issues of gun laws in speech and debate. I had to argue on both sides, both for and against gun laws. I had to, and I was in TV production. I knew how to talk on camera, and I knew how the stories in the news cycle typically went when it came to mass shootings. And I knew what the NRA said after these shootings was that you can't talk about this because this is too political. This is not the right time. You're politicizing tragedy. And I knew that if the very kids that went through the shooting said that you need to do something. And if we died in our classrooms, and said that we need to do something, it would be impossible for the NRA to say that we were politicizing tragedy when the very children who died in the shooting said you need to do something. So I took out my phone and I started interviewing my classmates, asking them about their experience and what they thought of, stronger gun laws, what they thought of the current state of America. And thankfully that day, my classmates and I in our classroom made it out. But in the building right next to us, 17 of my classmates and teachers did not. While I was in the classroom, not knowing whether or not we were going to die, I got a call from my sister who was crying, saying, "David, what's going on? I'm seeing stuff on social media, about a shooting." And she was on the other side of the school, thankfully, from where the shooting ended up happening. But you don't know that when this stuff is happening. And I just said to her, stay calm. I think it may just be a drill. Just stay calm and don't panic. And I had to hang up. A few hours later, after we got out, both my sister and I got out of the school. When my sister was at home, she would come to find out that 4 of her friends had died that day. I will never forget the unconscionable pain and wailing that I heard coming from her. And I didn't know what to do with myself. It was the first time in my life where there was nothing I could do to make my little sister feel better. And the only thing that I could think how to do was to go out and speak to the media, because I knew that if the students from the school did not start speaking out, that this would just be another tragedy where probably nothing changed. And the same talking heads on CNN and Fox News came on and said, we need to do X, Y, or Z things, and then got argued with, and then nothing changes. So I went out there and I just told the story of what happened that day, because I wanted to make sure that people like my sister were able to tell their story on their terms and not the terms of whatever talking heads or whether or not the media said determined whether or not at the time the largest school shoot, pretty much the largest high school shooting in American history was newsworthy or not. And as I was out there over the next few days, I ended up getting put in a group chat of young people saying that they wanted to do something about gun violence. And I found myself on the living room floor of my friend's house with 25 other students from my school and their siblings. And we decided to do something. We decided that we were going to, lead walkouts at high schools around the country. So we did that, and thousands of young people walked out 1 month after the shooting. We also decided that we were going to go up to Tallahassee and protest. And we got thousands of young people to go up to Tallahassee and protest our state legislature and demand action. And there were so many adults that said to us, "You're just a bunch of kids. You don't know what you're doing. You don't understand that in Florida, nothing can change here." The pundits, the pollsters, and so many other people said, like, this just is not possible. And we said, we don't care. We're going to make it possible. So we showed up there and we demanded action. We met with every single legislator that we could. We met with people met with the governor and demanded action, and more and more people met with them, telling the horrific stories of what they had experienced just a few weeks prior. And amazingly, despite what those pollsters and pundits and adults said when they told us it wasn't possible, we actually did change gun laws in Florida. We raised the age to buy a gun to 21 because the shooter at our high school was 19. And we passed a red flag law that could disarm people that are deemed a danger to themselves or others, where they can have their firearm temporarily confiscated by law enforcement with a right to due counsel and process. Since the shooting, since the passage of those laws, that law has been used over 12,000 times in Florida to disarm people that are at risk themselves or others. One of those instances was for somebody that threatened to kill my own mother, an NRA supporter that sent her a death threat that said, "F with the NRA and you will be DOA." It is only because we had the audacity to hope and believe that our government could be won by and for the people and not the special interests like the NRA that we actually were able to change gun laws. And that's when I learned the power of having just simply hope that anything could change. Because if you don't believe anything can change, if you believe that the political system is so broken that nothing is ever going to get better, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where it never will. And we decided after we showed up in Tallahassee that we were going to continue doing this work. And we said, well, we should show up at Congress. We should show up in DC and demand action. And we thought at the time that we'd get about 90 people there with us in Washington, DC. And we ended up getting over 800,000 with us in the largest protest in American history, with over 800 sister marches around the world, where we registered tens of thousands of young people to vote. And in the time since that election, we went out and we defeated more NRA-backed incumbents with the largest youth voter turnout in a non-presidential midterm in American history. And we showed the power of not doubting just or writing people off just because they're a bunch of kids or young adults. And then we continued that work. In 2020, we defeated Donald Trump, the person who had basically taken the most money of anyone, pretty much, in American history, at least any president. And we defeated him. And we elected President Biden, who has passed the first federal gun law in 30 years after Uvalde. That has put billions of dollars into school safety, into violence intervention programs, and also created an expanded background check process for people attempting to buy a gun under the age of 21, where essentially they'll go through, their records and talk to local law enforcement before they allow somebody to buy, under 21, allow somebody to buy something like the AR-15, like the 19-year-old shooter at my high school did, which he legally obtained and owned despite threatening multiple times to shoot up my high school. In the time since the passage of that law, over 500 people have been denied the ability to buy a gun like the AR-15 that were under the age of 21. People that had been convicted of, assaulting minors sexually, people that had been convicted of so many awful things that clearly made them a clear and present danger, that, they definitely should not have a gun like the AR-15. And that's part of the challenge with this work, is we can't prove the shooting that didn't happen, but we know that we are saving lives. We've saved lives in Florida, we've saved lives across the country, but we still have a lot more work to do. But we are making progress. Since the shooting, we've also elected Maxwell Frost, the first member of March for Our Lives and the first Gen Z person to Congress. We are making progress. It is not nearly enough, not nearly as much as I want, but we are making progress. And that is only because we had the audacity to hope. It is only because young people voted at the highest rates in American history in the past 3 elections that we've been able to do that. But if we give up, if we assume that the political system is never going to get better, that there's nothing we can do to make it better, it never will get better. So my best advice and my call to action to you would be to make sure that you're voting, not for Democrats or Republicans, but for morally just leaders that represent you, that fight for things like stronger gun laws in the first place. And make sure that you stay engaged. So many people ask me, what can I do to make change? I'm just one person. The most important thing that you can do isn't, it's great if you read books or do anything else like that, but the most important thing is you just need to try. 99% of people, just get so distracted by everything else going on in their life. They say they want to make some type of change, but they just get overwhelmed with where to start. Start anywhere. Start in your school. Start in your classroom. Start in your city or your state. And just get to work there. So many people just don't show up to their state legislatures or their school board meetings, and there's so many great policies that you can advocate for getting passed there that these politicians are just looking to be told basically why they should vote a certain way on these policies. But if you don't show up there, they can't know that. So make sure you turn out and vote. Make sure you show up and demand what you're passionate for and care about, and vote for morally just leaders to help make this a more perfect union, because no single person is coming to save us. We, as a generation and as generations alive today, have to save us, because we've been taught the mantra of run, hide, fight growing up our entire lives to survive a school shooter. We need to repurpose that. We need to start running for office to be the change that we need, because we've had some of the leaders that we've needed, but far too few of them. Because, and just as an example of why that's the case is because I'm talking to you right now. We need to fight for a better future where no child has to fear for their life in math class or outside of school. And we need to refuse to hide from the responsibility that we have to protect future generations. And that starts with you voting. So thank you so much for having me.
So David embodies the importance of hope and activism. I would like to show you now one of the clips of those 800 marches that have been run around the country. All right, so I went to Boston and went to film one of the events. And so I would like to show you some of the outgrowth of what he did. Right. So this is the product of what David and his friends started. All right. Um, I sat there and filming and watched all of these people with their signs of every type of person imaginable. Right. And they were all fighting for the one thing of peace and justice and equality and safety. One person can change the world. And so it's really exciting to be able to work with this group of wonderful fellows here at the university. We are able to provide them opportunities to research, to write, to get published, to make presentations like this, to build their networks, to build their careers and opportunities, to help them to change the world. We hope that they will inspire you to think about what you can do to help change the world too. Again, if you would like to talk to us about becoming a fellow with us, please be in touch with me at Salem State University. And enjoy this day of looking at how young people from all over the world are using their minds, their talents, their advocacy, their hearts to change the world for the better. Participation is something that is very important. Democracy cannot be earned when you're 21. It needs to start when you're a child. And this is where we learn about human rights and peace and justice. Thank you all for coming today.